Welcome to Leaders Live. Welcome back in New York City. Got a special guest today, Brackeen, the general partner over at Lightship Capital. Before we get to Brian, just thank you to our sponsors, Entre Group, group of entrepreneurs, networking group of entrepreneurs, 45,000 plus. Check them out at joinentre.com if you're looking for a founder, co-founder, or an engineer, or whatever it is. Check out their new app at joinentre.com and Cushman & Wakefield, where I work, helping people find new office space. But let's get into the show. Why are we doing this? We want to understand how business leaders operate, find out what they're looking for collaboration-wise, CEOs, founders, venture capital funds, and connect them with like-minded business leaders. So let's bring in Brian to the show. Brian, welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for today's show. I really appreciate your time.
I got to up my background game, though. You have a very, with a New York City, the town Manhattan kind of deal going there?
Yeah. We are on 51st Street, right by Radio City. So
Beautiful. This is my dining room wall. It is also stunning.
Those are beautiful flowers. My wife has very similar ones we decorate the house with. So Brian, obviously really appreciate your time. We want to get into your background, introduce you to the entrepreneurship community in New York City and Entre Group's community, co-founders, entrepreneurs, and everything that goes along with that. So before we talk about Lightship Capital, the VC group that you're dedicated to backing underrepresented founders, which is very exciting, let's kind of bring it back a little bit. How'd you get to this point? I know you were a founder at Kairos, but kind of bring us through a quick little 5-minute clip of how we got to Lightship Capital and started this.
Yeah, and again, thanks for having me. Big fan, love you on Twitter, all the things. So I'll go a little further back. So I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, originally, just in a cellar right away down from where you are right now. Grew up coding since I was 8 years old. So grew up with computers were always part of my life. I worked at Comcast in Philly, like almost everyone else does. I worked at IBM. And then I got the big break was taking a job at Apple. I got to Apple just after the iPhone launch and then all the way through the iPad launch, a period of just like exponential growth for the firm. Like Steve Jobs was still there. Tim Cook was head of operations. Nobody really knew who he was, wasn't even famous. And it was just a really transformational time. And then like everyone in Silicon Valley, got the startup bug. Friends of friends started Pinterest, and I was like, so I can just go ahead and start a company and just raise hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how it goes, right? And so I started a facial recognition AI company called Kairos. Initially in San Francisco, then moved it to Miami, Florida. One of the things that I was really thinking a lot about at the time was I knew even then that entrepreneurs of color have a harder time raising capital. And so I looked at the ratio of investors to startups. In California, there are 3 startups for every 1 investor. In Florida, there are 3 investors for every 1 startup. So I knew that just to improve my chances of even raising money, I had to move the company from California to Florida. Ultimately, we raised $13 million, which is great. Our largest, we have 35, 40 employees or so. And got a company to about $120 million valuation. Sold the company to a private equity firm in 2018 after a fight with the board about facial recognition and whether or not it should be used with government. Looking back, we all know now it shouldn't be, but at the time it was actually quite controversial. And then tried to figure out what I want to do next. My wife has started an accelerator for women and minorities in Cincinnati. So I went up there to start to mentor the companies and just fell in love with what I was seeing, the amount of entrepreneurship, the level of entrepreneurship. And they weren't getting their fair share of funding. So we set out to start a venture capital fund in 2019. Our initial goal was to raise $20 million. As we sit here today, we're at $45 million of commitments.
Wow.
So
before let's pause there for Lightship Capital.
Sure.
There, that's really exciting. Got $45 million funded. That's amazing. 2 things. First, I forgot to note that anyone watching, please check in, put your name down, and maybe your LinkedIn bio code so people can connect with you. But also, we're going to do a Q&A with Brian and definitely ask any questions. I saw Caleb popped in there. So Caleb, please, that question you actually sent me before, so we could actually bring it up on the screen. So looking forward to the Q&A towards, let's call it 3:30. But Brian, with Kairos, which was the top 25 startup recognized by Wall Street Journal, what type of lessons learned through that process that you took with you that you have today?
Oh, so much. One, just going fast. And you hear this a lot in the Valley as well. Go fast, break things. That's okay. As long as you're going fast, as long as you get the momentum. Speed is the only thing a startup has. It's the only tool in the toolbox. We're not better funded than the big guys. Yeah, we don't have more staff than the big guys, but you can be more nimble than the big guys. And so use that speed to your advantage and don't let anything rob you of that tool. That's number one. And number two kind of goes back to an Apple lesson about thinking differently. Look at a problem. Don't solve it the same way every other person has solved it. Try to be innovative and unique, and that the market will always give to an organization that solves things in a unique way.
That's good insight. I like that a lot. So, now you're at Lightship Capital. You're funding underrepresented founders. Talk about the sectors that you're focused on. You're heading up the AI group and the operations team. But what are sectors and what are the rounds, the type of investments you're looking at for these startup companies?
Charlie, you're damn good at this. You do your homework, you can put it all into the question. I'm impressed, man. I'm impressed.
Trying over here.
So, we're very focused on really 5 areas. We picked these 5 because these are the areas that our careers have led us to, and therefore we're the best and deepest connections in these areas, so we can be the most helpful to our portfolio companies in these 5 areas. AI, obviously, because I've worked as an AI startup. CPG. We're based in Cincinnati, Ohio, home of Procter & Gamble. We have great connections, great resources there. And so we like to use our knowledge of Procter, what they're doing, what they're looking for, problems they're trying to solve, so we can help our portfolio companies to use them as either a supporter, a customer, you name it. Healthcare. We know a lot of folks in healthcare, do a lot about healthcare, and plus we do healthcare really well in this region of the country. I also still have a great network in Miami, where Miami does a really good job with healthcare down there. Sustainability, it's just important for everyone. So our first investment was actually in the sustainability space. So CPG, AI, healthcare, sustainability, and e-commerce. So standard e-commerce firms that are selling either online on Amazon. They're easy to understand and also easy to help grow.
Right. The investment strategy that you guys are looking at, you're getting in early and then holding their hand through each round, or how does that kind of work when you're looking at investments coming in?
Yeah, we're usually the first institutional investor, so we're pretty early. Though that said, in the Midwest, people don't expect the cavalry to be coming, right? So they're like, I've got to make a business, I've got to get revenue, because there is no investor coming to check. So even though we're the first institutional investor, oftentimes somebody will get $1, $2, $3 million revenue before they even take VC investment in the Midwest. Completely different situation than on the coasts. So our first check's about $250,000. We want to just kind of get in, start to understand the company, start to understand the founder a little more as investors. We'll go up to $500,000 for that first check. But the second check we think is really important. We'll do $1 to $1.5 million in the second check, and that's right before Series A. So we invest in women and people of color, people with disabilities, immigrants, and those founders have a hard time raising their Series A. And so we will come to them and say, okay, it's okay. We understand what's going on. Come off the road. Here's $1.5 million. Go crush it. Just take this money and just go kill the numbers. And then next year, let's go back out and then say to people, look, you saw me last year. Here we are this year. Here's the growth. And you can get a Series A done with that kind of support. So we try to make those 2 kind of key investments. And then for 6 of our companies, we'll go all the way to the moon. We'll invest another $3 million.
That's solid. I like that a lot. Extremely helpful too. So it's really the seed and then the post-seed game or bridge to get to the Series A. Okay. So when these healthcare, AI, CPG, sustainable, or e-commerce companies come to you and they present a deck per se that you need to review to see if they're a good company or not, what are you looking for in that deck? What is helpful? Like what is a good deck look like for you? Again, not a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to get in here and learn from you and trying to maybe possibly pitch you. What's good for you in a deck?
Yeah, a couple things. Everyone has their own kind of preferences, which will drive an entrepreneur crazy. They'll all tell you something's good or bad, and you'll hear the same thing a million times. But for me, I'm an ex-Appler, so design's really important. I have a hard time when somebody's in like a CPG startup that's customer facing and the deck is like trash. It's hard for me to believe that you're going to create a beautiful product for the market and your deck is rough. It's hard. Beyond that, I think you need to hit all the kind of standard things. I need to understand the market. You need to understand the team, the founder and the team. Super, super, super important. I really need to understand where the company's going. I expect that you're at a stage now, you're just trying to get it right, and that's okay. But how big is your vision? And then what do you want to see at the end? Maybe that's selling, maybe that's IPO, maybe something else. And all these things are okay. But I need to understand what the direction of the company is from the deck.
Is that communicating the goals, or is that communicating, what they need to get to that goal? Like, what is that? How does someone kind of express that to you?
Yeah, good point. I feel like the timeline style is great, right? So this is where we are, and this is what we've done to get here.
Yeah.
And also, this is where we're going, and these are the things that have to happen for that to happen. And then if I believe those things are going to happen, or that you as a team can make that happen, I'm likely to invest, right? It also just shows your thinking, your rationale. You don't even have to be right, and no one's going to hold you to it. But just seeing the process that you went through in your head to decide, and that's the path in itself is enough.
Your website says you bet on the jockey and not the horse. So talking about founders, what are the qualities of successful founders that you like to bet on?
By the way, I like the crowd, the Tam Sum Sam folks. I appreciate that. That's my tribe. But yeah, the jockey is at this stage, early stage, is always more important than the horse. The company is going to change 5, 10, 20 times. You're going to take whatever system you built already, you're going to rebuild that system 3 times before you get, to the next scale. Yeah. So it's not about necessarily what you're doing right this second, but is that person and is that team the right team to hear a new idea, iterate their own ideas? Are they so dogmatic about what they're doing that they won't change? Or will they see, like Slack, an opportunity and pivot the company into that direction? I think Slack was like a gaming company or something like that before. If you had that vision to just put it all on the table in the right direction, then that's what we're looking back.
Yeah. How about the cadence of keeping up to date with your investment portfolio companies? If there was that type of pivot, how is it best for them to communicate that with you? Because obviously that's probably a hard conversation to have.
Yeah, I've had it unsuccessfully, by the way. So my company was initially a facial recognition time clock company. We were clocking in, clocking out for work. And then we realized along the way that, like facial recognition for corporations is a much bigger market. It's a much bigger idea. Let's move the company to that idea. So I went to the investors and said, hey, we're going to stop doing this whole thing that you invested in that I sold to you. Now we're going to do this other thing. We're going to be a facial recognition AI company. And it's like, well, Brian, we believe in you. You go with God. We're not putting any more money in, but go do it. Right? So I learned a lot from that. You need the conviction, also need the funds to make that kind of pivot.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of conversations like that going on right now with the pandemic. Everybody's kind of pivoting. There's a lot of uncertainty. How are you seeing everything that's happening? Not so much in your portfolio, but how are you guys changing your strategy with the pandemic happening and investment strategy?
Yeah, I would say no, actually. We're a 10-year fund. We're in the first year. We believe the macroeconomic environment is going to return to something different, but more like normal. soon, a year, 2 years, whatever, but it's not going to be 10, right? We're not going to be doing what we're doing now for the next decade. Me and you can go to a baseball game again, hopefully, sometime in the next 10 years, right? And so if you're thinking that long, you don't have to necessarily change how you invest, but you should definitely have a lens for, can the company you're investing in now navigate this microeconomic environment to get to the kind of normalized macroeconomics over a 10-year period. So we definitely think of it a little bit that way, and yet also try to stay steady on the path.
Yeah, I mean, you're in some good sectors too, especially with there going on sustainability. Those companies that are in that stage of growth in hiring or trying to get to that next level, even if it is through funding, what do you look at and what do you kind of guide them for the growth strategy and hiring? And I think this kind of falls into the culture too, and having a good company culture. How do you kind of help them along the way, or are you completely hands off and just kind of let them run their own ship?
Yeah, as a former entrepreneur, I'm definitely thoughtful about how we guide, but usually guidance is necessary. People, they pick us because they want our expertise, right? To help them to do their thing even bigger and better and faster, right? And so I often say to founders, my job is to illuminate for you your own North Star, right? Your own truth. I'm here to kind of give you some variables that you may or may not have considered that either make you double down on what you're doing or make you maybe illuminate a different path, but the path still has to come from you. It can't come from me. I'm only here to provide more and more data. And I think founders really appreciate that level of adultness,
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more because I think that's interesting in how you guide them. I mean, this kind of falls into a little bit of the mentorship aspect of it, right? You're a mentor with Girls Who Code. What other ideas do you give them? And I know you're probably not mentoring them as much, the people from Girls Who Code, but what are some of the tips that you give when mentoring these startups or these young kids?
Sometimes it's the same. Sometimes it's different. On the kind of adult side of the mentorship, it could be, here's a great one. Talent attraction is difficult for all companies at all stages, right? I bet you guys there are always looking for new folks to join the firm, period, constantly. And it's hard. And so technical talent is even harder because it doesn't matter if you're in real estate, tech, CPG, whatever, we're all trying to get those same engineers for our business, right? So the question is, where does a portfolio company or anyone, where should they look for technical talent? Should they go to colleges, universities, that kind of thing? And if they do, where should they look? One thing we tell our companies is, when you get to a college or university and you say you're looking for engineers and they start to walk you down to the School of Engineering, just stop them and ask them for the School of Music. Because musicians are absolutely, hands down, no matter what, the best engineers anyone will ever find. In fact, your rock star engineers are actually all musicians as well. It comes for a couple different reasons. One, to write music requires you to sit at a table for hours and hours and hours and code, right? To code the sounds out of your head into the notes. So your mind is just pre-designed for that exercise. Number two, you're a creative problem solver. You hear something, it's not quite right, you do something else, you play it again, you play it again, you play it again until it's absolutely correct. This iteration and this creative problem solving is crucial to a world-class engineer. One of my best engineers at Kairos, one of our more senior devs, he had a Grammy. Right? He was the drummer for the Bee Gees, and he was one of our lead engineers at Kairos, a guy named Steve Rucker. Amazing guy. Long hair, rocker, the whole nine. Used to play drums for us at the office, but also rock star coder.
That's amazing. It's funny because a good friend of mine, Ikram, started Venmo. He's the co-founder of Venmo. Recently just started a band, Ikram and the Immigrants Groove. And he's got another company he's working on, Hence right now it's an audio app. But Yeah, he's all in with the musician platform. That could be a good networking group, engineers and musicians.
There you go.
Yeah.
So if you're in the chat, drop your musical thing that you do or your LinkedIn, either one.
That's definitely a different way of looking at it. I like that a lot. That's interesting. Let's talk about collaboration opportunities. We always like to talk about what type of opportunities you're looking for, possible collaborations that have worked in the past, and what you're looking for now. So, I mean, can you touch on, I guess, what kind of collaborations you think are best and partnerships that are best and why they work best?
Yeah, we collaborate really well with corporations for a couple of different ways. One, they become our investors. Like one of our biggest investors is a company called Delta Dental. You may have them. They're the dental provider of all of our insurance. Very focused on this issue. They're also based in the Midwest. So they've been a great partner, and they help us, one, not just by investing, but two, we've got an upcoming investment in a company called Care. It's a mobile dentistry unit. So basically it's literally a van with a mobile dentistry chair in the back with x-rays, orthodontics, everything can be done in a full dental office in the van. They come to your house, park in your driveway, and just your entire service is done at your house. So the waiting room is your living room. Like that's it. There's no other environment. Companies growing like crazy during COVID now more than ever because we don't want to go to waiting rooms right now. We just want these services coming to us, and they do a great job on the high end with kind of high net worth folks because they can just pay, but also on the low end. So they take Medicare and Medicaid, and so they can go to low income zip codes and service lots of people there as well. So great service, great company. It's aligned with Delta Dental, and they're doing a bunch of things together through us.
Yeah. So the opportunity aspect of it, what are the opportunities? I know you said some partnerships that you're looking for, or major corporations, or what are the most likely partnerships that you're looking for that maybe someone watching on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever one of the platforms that we have on here right now can reach out to you and say that we have that and we could possibly help you?
Yeah, anybody, any corporation, or anybody that thinks it could be helpful in the kind of work that we do, that could take a variety of things. That could be, if you think that your demographic that you're looking to work with is in the Midwest, definitely come to us, come through us. If you look at the companies in our portfolio on our website, if you can be helpful to them, please come to us. We're happy to kind of put you guys together. And then, if you're a corporation looking to grow innovation, particularly in the minority women space, come to us so we can help you find companies to do that.
Yeah. We're going to do the Q&A in just a second here. But before we get into that, first I want to say definitely submit any questions. We got a few good ones in here that we'll get to. So I appreciate that. And some good commentary by Jeff Walsh. So keep that coming. He's a drummer. He's representing hard.
I appreciate the drummer Unite.
Unite. That's great. Networking aspect of this. Entre is a networking group that we're partnered with. So before the pandemic, we were at Microsoft. We were having 200, 300 entrepreneurs come meet. Obviously can't do that now. But regardless, do you have tips for networking that maybe you give to your portfolio companies, or do you give to your peers or anything like that to create more opportunities in collaborations?
Yeah, I think, man, you're right. It's like there's two different worlds, right? There's like, how do you network in the kind of post-COVID world, and how do you network in the pre-COVID world? They're probably two completely different things. I'd say, depending on the stage. If you're early stage, going to everything, like going to every meetup, every chat, every whatever, just talking, learning, sharing what you're doing, and not holding that just for you is really, really important, right? We get so worried about are they going to sell my idea? Those summits are never successful. So just share as much as possible. I think that's kind of really, really key. And then on the kind of in the post-COVID world where we're not doing all those things, this is actually a point of real democratization of access. So every single group, every conference, everything is now virtual for this period of time. You could be going to a conference that's usually in Paris that you wouldn't otherwise go to, no problem, and meet people there. So I would say availing ourselves of opportunities for the early stage. For your later stage, it's really actually more about being selective, right? You know what you do, you know the importance of the work, and you know the kind of partners you need. So then going hyper focused on finding the people that can help you for that thing that you now know you do. Yeah,
I think that's definitely a key point that you make that I always try to communicate is that when you're at these events or whatever it may be, don't hold these ideas that you're trying to work on to yourself because you're worried someone may steal it. It comes down to the execution a lot, but maybe that person knows somebody who could help. And, that's the whole point of networking. So keeping these ideas close to the chest is kind of, counterintuitive. It doesn't really help out in any sort of way. Let's get to some of the questions here. Let me see if I can pull one up here. And I see a few, but we'll bring Jeff up because he's been a rock star, right? Do you invest in startups with female co-founders? I think that's way up because I'll let you answer it, but go ahead.
Go ahead. You can answer for me too. Yes. In fact, those are we only invest in startups with women, either women-led of any race, shade, you name it, underrepresented minorities, people with disabilities, and immigrants.
Which are completely unfunded, not unfunded, but the
the stat for Black women represent 0.4% of all venture capital. So it is literally near zero. What's also crazy is, and this is a great conversation for folks in New York, because this is kind of where this situation comes from. When you think about the largest investors in VC funds, they're almost always pension funds. People like teachers' pension funds, for instance. And so teachers are, for the vast majority, 80% of the members of a teacher's pension fund, if not more, are women and minorities, possibly 90, right? Because many are women, right? And then some of those men that there are also minorities, right? So possibly over 90% of the dollars in a teacher's pension fund are from women and minorities, and yet those funds are almost exclusively invested outside of those groups. So this is one of the kind of biggest challenges we have in our industry. So our fund I think, represents our attempt to kind of fix some of that.
That's wild. I never knew that. Interesting fact there. I'm going to go to Caleb over here. What is the great value-added approach to growing and scaling an MVP model?
Whew, that is a tough one, because an MVP is just that. It's just enough, right? It's just enough to get by. But there's so many more things you need to do. I would say number one is extreme listening, just constant user interviews. And again, in a post-COVID world, again, having people sit at a table, test the product, and don't just have them kind of do the thing you ask them to do. Look at what they're doing with their hands, when they're using it. Do they do this? Do they do that? So let me give you a great example. We had set up a new system, and you sign up for the application, and then you got an email to verify that it was you, and then you could continue on the process. Number one, emails that usually people check on the phone. The inbox is such a world of distraction, so just don't do that. So we learn how to do it. But number two, the person was doing the test on the laptop, took their phone out and started reading their phone, and we were like, "Why are you looking at your phone?" And he's like, "Oh, the emails on my phone come faster than they do on my laptop, so I just check it there first." But the email we sent wasn't mobile friendly, right? And so it's you have to look at everything they're doing to figure out what you need to do in the future.
Yeah, leaving clues there. I like that. Mark says, so Mark here from Numio, what is transition you have to pivot from working with Kairos? How long did it take you to move on to your next venture?
No time. My wife saved my life. That's an absolute fact, period. I'm not just saying that because she's on the other side of this viewer. So after Kairos, she was like, okay, I was getting all these offers to do different things, run this company. And by the way, it's not even as impressive as it sounds. People were asking me to run their pizza shops, and then they're burger joints in Milwaukee. It was the straight hey, now that you're free, can you come run my chain of 40 pizza shops? No, bro, I don't know anything about your pizza shops. I'm an AI guy, But anyway, you were sending me all these different CEO offers, right? And so she said, why don't you come in and mentor some of the companies, think about what you want to do next, hang out here with me in the Midwest. And boom, I absolutely fell in love with taking care of startups. I absolutely fell in love with like the service, aspect of it and helping to make someone else's dream a reality. And so, yeah, it only took weeks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess you're a successful operator. They think that you could operate their pizza shop.
Probably. I'll try a pizza shop anywhere. Let me know. I'll come down there. I'll do it for you.
Yeah. Hey, it could work. Look, I mean, look, there's successful investments in pizza shops. LeBron is doing all right with Blaze, right?
Hey, actually, I love that pizza, actually, to be honest.
We got here a question about NDAs, right? So how does Brian feel about sharing development ideas in traditional ways, verbal NDAs, when networking like honor system while networking in credible context?
Yeah, I feel I wouldn't go too deep into like the engineering magic with a stranger, like as a flat out sentence. But NDAs in general are not going to save you because you probably can't afford to enforce said NDA anyway, right? So if like Joe Blow, like big corporation hears about it and they go to do it, you could try to sue Amazon for it. Maybe a decade later you get a few bucks. It's not worth not talking to people about. It's better. You will get much more bang for your buck by telling more people about what you're doing than less. But as far as the actual magic of it, you don't have to talk about that and to get help.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, going through the legal battle of someone trying to steal your idea. But I guess it comes down to the execution of it too, right? If you can make it happen, you make it work.
That's right.
Yeah.
People don't have the energy to steal someone else's idea and to do a great job, right? But yeah, if you can take that idea and run with it, and you have the passion, no one's going to catch you anyway.
Right. Let's hope so. That would be very nice either way. As we wrap up and we kind of bring this to a head, can you give us kind of your words to live by, personal mantra or ethos that you inspire people with?
Before I do that, there's a comment in the chat about David Portnoy. Bro, I love that guy. One bite, everybody knows the rules. Like I watched it. I'm so obsessed with his pizza reviews. So yeah, I would love to see that. I'm working my way through his reviews now. But one bit of advice beyond Googling and finding out who David Portnoy is and following his pizza reviews. Early stage, just start. Don't wait. Go fast. Keep going. For early stage, the process is the work. We'll get you there. Don't even worry about the outcome. Just the process will lead to outcomes. For later stage, pick friends, pick investors well, right? The people you surround yourself with will lead to greater success or failure. And so it's all about your network. It's all about the people. Use that early stage networking to find the best folks and then keep those folks close with you throughout your entire journey.
Yeah. Let's end off with this last question that popped up. And I think it's a good one. It's what's the best way to get a pitch to Brian? Is it email? Is it through Twitter, DM, slide in the DM? Like we'll keep with this. What's the best way to, approach you and get this to you to communicate it well? Is it a clear, concise email, good heading, title? Tell me what you think is best.
Take your deck, print it out, hide in my bushes at my house, and throw it at me in the morning. No, you're not. You don't need to do any of those things, guys. You don't need to no DM. You don't need to do any of those things. You can just go to lightship.capital. There's an apply for funding button. You can submit your deck and submit all your information. It's literally as simple as that. One of the reasons we chose that, I should say, though, because it's important, is these founders don't always have good access to use, right? Who knows everybody, right? I mean, they know you from the show, but they don't know you enough. And so when you don't have enough access to capital, it's hard to kind of get your idea in front of investors. And if you're in the Midwest, a lot of times those things don't overlap, right? You didn't go to HBS. You might have went to Tulane, right? You might have went to, you name it. So you don't have that kind of that network. So we just made it open, and every single person that applies gets a response. Every single one. We want them to feel like venture capital is not this kind of walled garden, but really is an open area to be supported.
That's great. Lightship.capital, check it out. We put that up there. I appreciate your time. I think that's good. With solid show. Really appreciate it. And, let me know how I could help, and we could do some big things later on, hopefully.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Brian. Thanks.